Okay, my name today is David John Kinsella. I was originally, before being adopted, David John McAniff. Elizabeth McAniff was my birth mother's name. I was born in one of Ireland's notorious institutions. There are many of them across the 26 counties, and it would be across the 32 counties, because there's also issues on in Belfast with the Savia group in similar issues in the north as there is in the south, but much bigger, a wider scope here in the south of Ireland. However, regarding myself and my own experience, I was born in St Patrick's Mother and Baby Home, Navan Road, on the 2nd of August 1958, as my records here pertain.
How did you get your records?
These are the actual medical records, what a lot of survivors cannot get. How I came across my records was after trying, on my third occasion, trying to trace my identity and who I was, because I was going through a phase, an identity crisis be it, but in other terms it's known as genetic bewilderment, an identity as to who I am, because that started off, and how I came across my records, that started off when I was 12 years of age, about to make my first confirmation as in Catholic Ireland, and my adopted mother said to me, "We have a problem, Dave, that we need to talk about." And what's that, Mum? My adopted mum. "You won't be able to make your confirmation next week with the boys." "Why is that, Mum?" "Because you already made your confirmation twice. You were actually adopted." That's what I couldn't fathom when I was 6 years of age and 7 years. I knew everything wasn't all that right. I knew there was something wrong.
So it wasn't until you were 12 years old that you were told for the first time that you were adopted?
Yes.
It's a shock.
And maybe I mightn't have been told until a later stage, but only that the school confirmations were on the following week at this time when I was 12, and I had to be told. It was a shock and awe to me. It was daunting, but yet it was an intrinsic thing within that I knew all wasn't right as was when I was adopted from there. I felt them senses of being around the age of 6 that something wasn't right, and it's only in 12 when I realised. At the age of 17 I tried under the Eastern Health Board before they became the HSE, and the Eastern Health Board, I inquired to try and find out who I was, and I was told I was too young, you had to be 18. I tried again when I was 18 on the second time, and I was given a social worker after about 6 or 8 months waiting. After seeing the social worker, she carried me through 3 or 4 counselling sessions at the age of 18, before getting any information as to who I was, who my mother was. Them counselling sessions, I clearly recall, like, you know, and maybe it's an area that had to be done, was, like, you know, what if you were born out of incest? What if your mum was raped? What if it was a marital affair? What if it was a clerical thing where your mum might have been working for a priest? All these questions were asked, you know. I said, in here my heart wants to meet my mum. Who the fuck am I? That's what I wanted to know. So she said, oh, that was the counselling session. About 2 months later then, the social worker came back to me, and her name was Rose Smith was her name at the time, I recall. And Rose came back to me and said, we have found out a little information that you were born in St Patrick's Mother and Baby Home, Navan Road. Your mum was with you for possibly a year to 2 years. However, you were actually there for a full 4 years, and we know then that within the first or second year your mother was discharged. At that time I didn't know what discharge meant, you know, at 18 years of age. And discharge, we know in today's terms, and all the other survivors in Ireland as a whole, the mothers and the infants who are now adults, we know being discharged meant that they were discharged from their duties within the laundries attached to these homes. If it wasn't laundries, they were made work in hotels for 10 to 12 hours a day, or in the laundries. So initially our mums were given, I've heard so many stand stories I know an awful lot of birth mothers, and birth mothers like to be called, there's two particular names. Some of the birth mothers like to be called natural mothers, whose child was taken, and some like to be called birth mothers. So as I go through the story here, I just call my own birth mum my birth mum, so I'm just going to use the phrase birth mum. But acknowledging that natural mothers is the same thing as well, out of respect. However, at that time that the social worker told me, that you were, and your mum was discharged, and she went to England, because the system was so cruel to infants and mother alike, because they had a child out of wedlock, they said that they had the stain or the spawn of Satan in their souls, and go to cleanse that and get yourself across the waters to Britain.
So because they could just say that again, because they were told
they
had
either the spawn of Satan on their souls or the stain of Satan within their souls for having a child out of wedlock.
So they had to go to England to cleanse themselves?
Yes, and never mention the home that they were into, never mention about that child, whether that child had died or was going for adoption, that you carry that stain, and you carry that penance for the rest of your life. You have shamed society, you have shamed your family, you have shamed the local priest. Everybody's talking about you. That's what the mothers had to leave. The majority that went to England, some are still here in Ireland, the majority are still here in Ireland, but in my experience, in my case, my mother, I would be 99.9% sure, because I was anointed and confirmed on 2 occasions in the home. The first occasion was on the 18th of December 1958, after getting the standard BCG vaccine, and 4 days later, on the 22nd of December 1958, I'm 4 months old at this stage, I'm anointed and confirmed in grave danger of death, as I have a certificate confirming that here.
That's it?
I'm anointed and confirmed.
And
that was just solely to getting the BCG 4 months later. And that's it there, blown up in an A3. Certificate of confirmation, and in the bottom it's written in Italian and in English. Engraved danger.
If confirmation was conferred by a priest,
Father,
the cause danger of death from grave illness. And you just had the TB vaccine?
The BCG vaccine.
BCG,
yeah. And prior to, that was as I say, on the 18th of December 58, and prior to getting that, my records say here, on the 11th of November 1958, a month before that I was premature born, but yet a good healthy baby that may be ready for adoption. And
Did it say that on that?
Pardon?
Did it
Yes.
say that?
Yeah.
Good for Mum.
So, was premature infant, and there's the date. You see the date there, running.
Physically healthy.
Yeah, that's the date.
Fit for adoption.
Yeah.
Fit for adoption. Or boarding out. What does boarding out mean?
Boarding out would have been given to foster families. If they didn't take you or didn't like you, you can bring him or her back, the infant. You can bring them back, like plastic dolls in the shop, and in a toy shop. We were a commodity.
What does that say? Very much something something.
Very much. It's hard to make that part of it
Yeah,
out.
it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Anyway, so you were healthy
Yeah.
and you were ready for adoption, or
Yeah, and that's all in a month before I got the BCG vaccine in November. November '58, and I got the BCG vaccine in December '58. So going from healthy to a BCG vaccine, being anointed and comparing 4 days later,
yeah.
that was the start of a downhill. I was hospitalised 6 times thereafter in St Kevin's Hospital, which is now St James's. St James's Hospital here in Dublin, and St Kevin's was an offset hospital for infants born in St Patrick's. If they became ill, so I was rushed there 6 times.
Do you have any more vaccines?
Oh, there's plenty. There's plenty. Yes.
Because this is going back so many years when they didn't do all these.
This is over a
vaccines.
4-year period I was in there. Now, now all the vaccines are here, but I can show you either where I went through these with a fine tooth comb. Just find them out there.
Sorry, don't worry, don't rush.
Here.
There's so many bits of paper here.
Some a bit of yellow paper. Where does I put it?
Is it these yellow ones? Here?
This could be it here. Yes. After going through when I got, as I say, these are A3, and these are only small little, tiny little, they're right little, like, they were nearly as small as playing cards when I got them at first.
And also, she was saying earlier, these bits have been blacked out. She has not got all of his
Blacked
medical
out.
records. It's
But
been...
every time I went over these records over the years when I got them, when I went through them with a fine tooth comb, I found another needle in the haystack, to put it bluntly. And what I mean by that is, writing down, they're all the vaccines I got in a row, as can be seen there.
This is in 1958.
Wait, what is that? What is Wasserman?
Wasserman injection or Wasserman test is a test. Not all infants got the Wasserman. That have the records, the lucky ones to have the records as well. But Wasserman is a test that tests you for syphilis, gonorrhea, to see if the infant has it or the mother has it. From finding out who my mother was, Lord rest her, there would have been no reason whatsoever to do either test on my mother or myself, because my mother apparently, as they used the word, the infant and mother came from good stock. So my mother, Lord rest her, hadn't got a reputation at all of having numerous affairs or in that particular time, like, you know. They used the term in the homes and the laundries, particularly for the infant, that this infant came from good stock. My mother, Lord rest her, came from a wealthy family. They owned a shop. They lived in a shop on the North Strand Road. They moved to, after my mother was casted across to Britain, to Basingstoke, where she lived and died. The rest of our family moved to a wealthier area, Dublin then, like, you know. Some of that family are still about today, but coming back to myself, from getting the BCG vaccine and being anointed, that was the roller coaster, the start of a roller coaster, to being hospitalised 6 times in St Kevin's with numerous different vaccines, sometimes getting the same vaccine the following year, later again and again. I had to have a full blood transfusion on my 6th visit. My last visit was involved in having a full blood transfusion, totally, which nearly killed me again. You know?
I wonder how many they gave back then in 58 and 59.
I think
Does it seem
so. They're basically, okay, because there's more to the story. Because this is you guys were tested on, and when you talk
Yes.
about being a survivor, you literally mean that, because
Oh, I do, yeah,
so
yeah,
many
yeah.
didn't make it. So that's where the story is going.
Yes, yeah.
All right, carry on.
And how I came across these files was when I met that social worker, and she just told me that at the age of 18. That devastated me. I was working at that time. I started a job. I had a very low IQ in primary school. I was expelled from vocational school in my first year, because I realised now I was crying out. Identity crisis, genetic bewilderment, and it was in the carpentry class. I got together all the shavings, carpentry shavings, and set forward to the class, and I got expelled for that, obviously, But as I know now, I was crying out. I was looking for someone to talk to, a few months after that, I never became a firebug, but I set fire to another. Loads of haystacks, and there was an oil refinery near it as a young lad at that age. That was when I was younger, should I say, before going to vocational school. And so it was my way of acting out. What the fuck is going on with me? I didn't know, and but how and after the social worker told me that your mum went to England, and that's all we know. We've no records belong to you whatsoever. I spiraled into chronic addiction, alcoholism, prescription drug use, and also Palfium was a sort of a coming of a street core drug in the 80s at that time, before the stages of heroin came in, and so I Valium, prescription Valium. I was going to psychiatrists, I was going to doctors, I was building up. I was taking Valium like Smarties. I was drinking excessively, and my other core drug was Palf. I had 3 hospitalisations in St Kevin's, which is now St James's, but St Kevin's do have Hospital 6. It's the psychiatric unit in there, where I was kept in there on 3 occasions due to my alcoholism and addiction. I finally came out of that turmoil of addiction at the age of 24, when I went into the then Jervis Street Shopping Centre. It used to be a hospital in Dublin, and it was the only really main detox hospital in the area at the time. So I went in there to detox, and that detox nearly killed me, and then I went from there straight to the Rutland Centre. It's a renowned rehabilitation treatment centre, and based on the US model, the Minnesota model, and at that time in the 80s, at 24, it was a very harsh, hardcore treatment regime, and that's where it took to work for me, and I've since been clean and sober, but it's been a heck of a journey, emotionally and psychologically still, without having to subside to addiction, but it's been a hell of a journey, and then in 2005 I wanted to look for my mother again. When I really started redeveloping myself and getting my head together, and I was doing a course in university at the time, because I had no education as a young lad, and I was doing a course around addiction counselling and psychotherapy and all that stuff, and I was only looking for a pass, and and once I kind of got the foundation and the certificate and then the diploma, I can do this, and then I went on to do an honours degree. But in 2005, while I was doing the diploma course, I started looking for my mother again under the HSE, the Health Service Executive, as it's known now. And I think it's because I was given a dedicated social worker, a lovely woman, and I was her last case. She was returning. And her first name was, I just mentioned her first name was Barbara, a lovely woman. And I went to her in 2004. I sought the assistance of Barbara, and Barbara in 2005 at 10:20 on the 7th of November 2005. I was sitting in the office where I once worked, in a South Dublin County Council office. I worked in the stores, and the phone rang at 10:20, and she said, "Hi David, this is Barbara." I said, "Yeah, I recognise the voice, Barbara." She said, "I'm sorry for ringing you. I'd really rather be talking to you in person, but I hope I'm not sounding unethical here, but I need to talk to you on the phone because I've another person on the other line who I have to revert back to at this moment in time. I've good news and bad news for you, David. The bad news is, David, that your mum died in Basingstoke in 1987, in April 87, and that's the sad news. And she was only 61 years of age when she died. The good news, if you want to look at it that way, one of your middle siblings, one of 44 siblings in London, in Basingstoke, and one of your middle siblings, Emma, wants to fly in next Friday, Saturday the 12th of November, to meet you. And that's why I had to ring you, Dave, because she's on the other line. And I said, oh God, I said, do I need to ring you back, Dave? And I broke down crying, I recomposed myself, and Barbara rang me back in 3 minutes time. And I said, yeah, I'm just overwhelmed, Barbara, like, you know, it's sad, but it's good, like, you know, what's her name? So she said, well, her name is Emma, you know, she's a middle sibling. And then she said, I do have to tell you, David, I was in court. I did try to see what all your siblings meet up with you, like, you know, or whatever. And apparently your other siblings, Dolores, Robert and Roy, they're a bit just hating about this whole thing. They can't comprehend all this, like, you know, that they have an elder brother, like, you know, that you're the eldest. However, Emma does want to come in and meet you. So Emma flew in that 5:30 in the Great Southern Hotel in Dublin Airport. The airport is now gone, or that hotel is now gone, but it was known as the Great Southern Hotel. I remember sitting in the foyer, a couple of feet from reception. It was a very busy day. I'm sitting on the couch with Barbara and looking at my eyes were going bump, bump at the three lifts, left, centre and right. And at 5:30 exactly, a lady walked out of the lift, and I spot her straight. It was Emma, like, you know, she didn't have to go to reception because she was the image of my youngest daughter. I seen my youngest daughter, the images, and you know, and that grasped me. And so we embraced and sat down and spoke, and we were getting on well. And the social worker said, I don't have to be here anymore, everything's going great, like, you know. So she was telling me all about what Mum was like, you know. And you know, when she said that, the word she used when she said, our mum never spoke to you, David, like, you know. I'm flabbergasted still, but our mum never. And to hear that for the first time, it relished me to tears, like, you know. Our mum, like, you know, to being a part of a real family, you know. And we spoke and talked, and she said that I don't really, and even at the end conversation, she told me all about our mum, and she said, like, you know, and she said that even our mum on the cobblocks, on our back streets were all cobblocks, she said, like, you know, in Basingstoke. It was a working class area, like, you know. And our mum was the type, like, you know, if one of the little boys or girls we'd be playing with fell and cut their knee on the cobble-lock, because a lot of kids were all divils for their runners tripping on the cobble-lock, and, like, you know, like as though in Temple Bar, similar to that. Our mum was the one that had put them on their knee and put the plaster on and patched them up and send them off, like, you know, and her heart was anxious, and she said, you know, Mum could never give up a child, you know. And I said, she didn't give up a child, she was made and forced by the system of the Catholic Church and society, and the state was complicit in that as well, because they were making a lot of money out of adoptions. The sisterly orderly were getting money from the state, the adopted families were paying money into to the nuns and or wherever parish they came from, like, you know, paying money into it. They were probably unaware of it as well, but paying money in, and that's the way, you know. So Emma still found that very hard to grasp, and it's only when she said to me near the end of the night, do you know something, Dave? There was often times when we'd come home or walk by our bedroom, and she said, because our dad died very, very young, he died years ago, and he was only 52 when he died, and we were only little ones, like, you know. Then she said, like, you know, but even though Dad was dead many years, Mum often sat on her bed and she'd be crying, like, you know, and Dee, as we call her, Laura or Emma, would say, "Are you okay, Mum?" She says, "Yeah, I'm just thinking of something of the past." And when Emma said, "She must have been thinking of you, David," you know, and I had to say to Emma, it's a high possibility, because I was anointed and confirmed as being dead after getting particularly the BCG vaccine. They did tell a lot of mothers, and I'm 99.9% sure they told their mum that I had died, and that's how they got a lot of women out of the home and sent them across to England.
Such a sad story.
Yeah. But you know, that meeting Emma I was delighted, like, you know, but sadly I was to face rejection again. I got an email off Emma in February 2016 saying that, you know, that I've a family myself, David, like, you know, I've issues on my own. I'm still finding this very, very hard to comprehend, as so with your other siblings, like, you know. However, we do wish you well, and if there's ever a time, if there ever will be a time that's right for us, we don't know. And that's since 2005, there's been no word since, like, you know. But again, my door is always open for my siblings. I've let them know that, and if they ever wish to come, you know. But the whole effect of these mother and baby homes, the issue of the Tuam babies, the 800 babies that being found in sewers and dungeons within the Tuam, you know, in Tuam, County Galway, like, you know, you know, that's probably only the tip of the iceberg, because the home I came.
Can you explain a bit about that to the people that don't know about the babies?
Yeah, yes. Tuam mother and baby home would have been similar to all the other mother and baby homes as such, but Tuam was known in the village of Tuam itself, where folk would kind of see the orphans. You know, some of the orphans would be 2, 3 and 4, like, you know, and they weren't allowed to play with them or mingle with them, like, you know. And then apparently in the 1970s there was some kids playing in the area, and they came across skeletal bones that they didn't know whether it was an animal or what, or, you know, in the ground. And apparently the council and the police got involved, and apparently it was skeletal remains of children. Yeah. So
how many did they find?
And then when under the Commission of Mother Investigation into Mother and Baby Homes, which started in February 2015, and that's still ongoing now. It finishes its work in February 2018. There's 2018 coming. The Commission had sought particular orders where they had the whole area in Tuam excavated, and they found sort of septic tanks, underground septic tanks, and sewers and dungeon type of areas where there was skeletal remains just as if they were flung there. Some were apparently wrapped in a sort of a sack, like a sack, like, you know, a clothy type of sack, or a sandbag type of thing, and just placed there.
And these were babies and children? These
were babies and infants, yeah.
And how many did they find?
796.
Hear that, Pete? 796.
They call it the Tuam 800. And
so we know that these children and babies were experimented on with vaccines.
Have
you got something else right there? Vaxxed thing.
Oh,
this thing.
In other homes. Oh yeah, yes. GSK and the Wellcome Foundation, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, sorry, carry on.
So, if they were to carry on such atrocities in Tuam and the home I was in, St. Patrick's, thousands of infants, thousands of babies died from St. Patrick's also. They're supposedly buried in a mass grave in Glasnevin, known as the Angel's Plot. But St. Patrick's was quite a huge home. It's still, the wall of it is still there today, but it's on HSE grounds where they work with disability people. And there's a wealthy housing estate built on top of it as well. I wouldn't be at all surprised one bit whatsoever if there's a lot of infants buried in St. Patrick's ground and with all the mother and baby homes as a whole in similar essence to what went on in Tuam, because them congregations carried out the same regime. They'd no ethos, they'd no ethical guidelines, you know, they just carried on the same because we were simply born out of wedlock, you know. Some mothers, when their children were born, there was no anaesthetic given, there was no painkillers given, like, you know, and mothers were often told to crawl back to your dormitory or crawl back to your bed. This is the start of your penitence. Some of the graves in Glasnevin, the Magdalene graves, it actually has written on it, big tombstones that are put there where there's mass graves of Magdalenes, where the nuns have on it, here died Magdalenes for their penitence.
It actually says on the grave.
Penitence, yes.
Oh my gosh.
You know.
So now you have a daughter, you said?
I have 6 children.
6 children.
3 sons and 3 daughters.
And how are they?
They're healthy, thank God.
Did you vaccinate them?
Did I vaccinate them? At the time, I did. And at the time, I was doing my actual degree in addiction studies and addiction counselling. I turned wherever I come up, the whole lecture turned onto something that I brought up in a topic, and this will come back to your question, that you know, the topic was, what is addiction? There's many concepts of what addiction is, and I put my hand up and I said, I put my hand up, you know, as a student and as a father, that I may have been the cause, or could be the cause, if any of my sons or daughters become addicted, you know, not just by going with genetic predisposition because I had alcohol tendencies and addiction, but because when my little ones would be crying, as were any mother's or father's infant, we used to give them Calpol, gripe water, you know, all these over-the-counter remedies, like, you know, particularly gripe water, like, you know, and I think that, one, you know, on a personal aspect, that a concept that we may have, for our sons and daughters who do go on to have addictive tendencies, we may have perpetuated in that by giving them gripe water and other antidotes for pain, you know, as parents, because we didn't know the full extremes of these over-the-counter medicines, and particularly the way, I suppose, vaccines altered my mind, like, you know, they made me so introverted as a young lad. I had a low IQ, even at 21 years of age, when
Keep going, sorry.
even at 21 years of age, when I went in for my first detox and narcotic use, it has on me, on them medical records, even at 21 years, a very low IQ, like, you know, and so these are, I think, because of getting the vaccine, whatever, these vast amount of vaccines in the mother and baby home, and besides some kind of propelling me into a near-death situation where I've lived to tell the story now, thank God. You know, they may have been, the vaccines, the onset of my addiction, you know, because it is, you know, I was adopted, like, you know, I never know whether my real birth mum and whoever my father is, you know, I'm 99% of a hunch on it, like, you know, but I've yet to find that other 1%, like, you know, and I'll come there when I'm ready for that, like, you know. But because I don't know the genetics of my own birth family, like, you know, and there are things that the HSE still deny us to this day, you know. In a recent letter I got there early last year was looking for other records of my birth mum, like, you know. I have decided to not deny the rest of these records, and I think because the redacted parts and other parts that would have been used in somewhat vaccine trials is contained in them records, you know. Even though I was looking for any sort of a relic, a picture or something that my mother would have left there, like, you know, for me. There's many survivors in my situation. There's many survivors.
Have you met some more survivors?
I would have access and contact to many survivors, you know.
Do they all have post-traumatic stress disorder as well? Are they all...
The majority would be all we would be all have been affected in many ways. Some with prescription drugs addiction, some with high anxiety, some with ongoing depression, like, you know, dual diagnosis. It's all there amongst survivors. We're all affected in very many ways. Any particular survivor, particularly any infants, like, you know, would have these immense fears of rejection that they go through, like, you know. And there is when I talk about rejection and the primal wounds, like, you know, there's a fantastic book that will relate an awful lot to the mothers and the infants, and it's a renowned book by Nancy Newton Verdier, The Primal Wound. And it's a thing that we'll carry within us, it's intrinsically, for the rest of our life. Regardless of what we find, what information we find on ourselves, we'll always have that primal wound. Like, and to give an example, I'll never know, you know, what it's like to sit at a table with a real mum and dad and my siblings beside me. I'll never get that now, like, you know. I'll never know what that's like. So that's just one aspect of the primal wound. The other aspects are what it would have been like to grow up and playing with my own siblings, you know. It also plays a havoc with your life. Even though I have three beautiful sons, three beautiful daughters, like, you know, I've often been in the room with them. And a lot of the survivors will say this themselves, particularly sons and daughters who were adopted, like, you know, or fostered, that fear of rejection, but also you could be in a crowded room, and I could be in a crowded room, as I've often been with my family, even at a wedding, and I would feel so distant, so way out there, like, you know, that so lost, you know.
Sad.
You know, and even though my sons and daughters, you know, couldn't comprehend it, thankfully today through Channel 4 they're showing on UTV. Sharon Lall is renowned here in Ireland for doing adoption stories, and then UTV, long lost families, like, you know, and it all has a similar essence of the birth mother looking for the son or daughter, or the son or daughter looking for the birth mum, like, you know. And we all go through the same gratification in the emotional end of it, like, you know, the deep, raw. The emotion will always be raw. The term, you'll get over it, you'll never get over it. You never. It's always in the head, like, you know. My sons and daughters have often said, Dad, would you not take a stand back from all this, you know, protesting at the dial for justice and our rights, as I would do from time to time outside Dáil Éireann with other survivors. You know, there are times when I know I need to take a stand back, and if I can afford it, I'd go off on a holiday and take time out and chill out, like, you know, and try not to think of it, like, you know. There was one time about 5 years ago, I was taking time out when I was doing a bit of independent studying, as I love doing independent study and research. And I was only after arriving at this complex in Spain, and I was sitting by the pool the next day having a cappuccino and a fresh orange juice, like, you know, and I love the way the Spaniards made their, the real fresh orange juice and having that, and a cigarette. That's the, I still have to have it, the cigarettes. But I was sitting there and I heard this girl on the phone. She had her back to me. It brought me back to the whole reminiscence of meeting Emma, my sibling, for the first time, and it sounded like her and everything, like, and I just went into a sort of coming over to Spain, trying to get away from it all. But the trigger, the easy, it's like, the trigger of her voice sounded like her, but it wasn't her. But yeah, I started crying. I had to go up to the apartment and console myself and come back down, like, because it took me back to the whole time of meeting her and that feeling of rejection, like, that nothing has happened since. And but that's what mothers and sons and daughters go through, is that trigger, like, it's like addiction. You pass by a pub, but with us the primal wound is, we could be watching adoption stories or long lost families, and there could be a trigger in that, even though our hearts will go out to the people on the screen, but there might be a very real on real with the person's own experience that they're watching, like, so it'll never be gone,
Well, the people watching you are sending you lots of hearts and love.
Okay.
Are you on Facebook?
I am, yes.
Can they contact you? Be your friend?
Yeah.
What's your name on Facebook?
David Kinsella.
David
Kinsella, Kinsella, Kinsella.
Kinse
Double L
A.
Yeah, David Kinsella.
Okay, you're about to get some new friends.
Oh, great,
And look,
great.
You see those hearts here and
Oh,
here
yeah,
and
yeah.
here.
Oh, lovely.
They're sending them to you now
Fantastic.
live. They're watching you live and they're sending you that love.
Great.
See how much you love?
Okay. Fantastic.
So you can't choose your family, but you can choose your
You
friends.
can choose your friends.
And these are your friends.
That's it. That's
You've been through literally a horrible
Aye.
time of life. But wait a minute, what am I doing here? I'm blocking. God, sorry, don't take it off me. I can't get it off me. Sorry, Periscope. Okay.
Aye.
That was awful. Gosh, I don't know what to say to you. It's just awful.
Okay.
Now, is there anything anyone can do to help you? How can we help?
To help me, well, as I say, my siblings are over in Basingstoke, and I understand where they're at, and if Emma, Dolores, I won't mention their second name, if Emma or Dolores or Rob or Roy is watching, like, my door's always open for us. I'm only across the water. Sadly, Mum had to go to the grave without talking my existence, but I know it was in her heart, and a lot of mums that were forced from Ireland to Britain, like, and I'm glad she did meet a nice gentleman and get married, and sadly I know that my sibling's dad died very young, and that they might have had at times kind of thought, like, when their dad died was only realised now was he my dad, like, but I know my mum went to England, met a nice gentleman, but I know my dad is a totally different person to my siblings, and that's understandable, like, and I'm glad that my mum did get married and had 4 lovely children, 4 lovely siblings, like, and I would never hold anything against them whatsoever, and my door is always open.
That's so lovely. Now, they want to know what your Facebook page looks like. Do you have a picture on there?
I do.
Because they want to make sure they get the right person.
There's a picture of my mum and me standing at a speaker, and the picture of St. Patrick's Mother and Baby Home. I'll show it to you now.
You've got a picture of your real mum with you?
Yeah.
How did you get that?
When Emma came over to see me for the first time, she gave me a picture.
But how did she get it?
My sibling Emma.
Yeah, the picture of you and your mum? No.
Oh, not me and my mum together.
Okay, got it.
No,
Okay, no, okay.
Just a picture of my mum on her own.
Oh, a mum and her. Okay, got it. See a picture of your mum. Sorry.
Okay. So my Facebook will be See,
Sick.
is that, there it is there. Yeah,
That's MP.
that's me.
Okay, they're going to be friends with you.
Great. Great.
Okay, they got it. That's fantastic. Thank you so much for telling
No
your story.
problem.
And we're really sorry that you've been just, I mean, there's no words to describe
Right.
the
Mhm.
hell. There's a lot of people going to pray for you.
Great. Okay.
I know you've been very let down by the church and the nuns and all that kind of
Mhm.
stuff. So I'm
And-
sorry.
And even at the moment, there's a lot of protests. I'm actually going to a protest this Sunday, where a maternity hospital here, St Vincent's, they're trying to have it run by the nuns, you know. But we don't want society to go. The people who never went through what we went through, they're aware of what we went through, and there's a lot of protests happening. There's one happening this Sunday from Parnell Square. So
Anyone who can get there and help, get there and help.
yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. This paperwork.
Okay. And can I just mention one more thing? If it's
Yes, you
time?
can.
I'd like to say hello to Laura Collins and Mary Collins in London. Laura and Mary have similar history to myself, where their mum is buried in a mass Magdalene grave in Cork, and the Collins family in London are coming over again we're going to be supporting them in a protest outside Dáil Éireann on the 6th of June. And they're anxious to have their mother repatriated from Cork over to London, where the Collins family live. So
It's just wicked.
I'll see you in June, Laura.
Wow, thank you so much.
No problem.